All right, we're recording, and I'm going to have you reintroduce yourself for our part 2 conversation.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Euda K Best, and I am based in Denver, Colorado right now. Although I don't know how long that's going to be.
Oh.
Yeah, I keep getting the tower card, and I feel like, especially there's this one deck where it's like the tribe is being washed away.
Yeah.
And so I really feel like it's a move, but time will tell. But anyway, so I'm based in Denver, Colorado right now, and I am a spiritual guide. I read cards, regular playing cards. There's a system called cardology, which is based in astrology that I love. I teach yoga and meditation, and I really love holding space for art therapy sessions, and I'm doing more and more of that, which is awesome.
And things have picked up for you during the last, we talked with each other about 3 months ago, very close to the beginning of the series. And it seems like things have picked up for you a lot in that time.
Yeah. I feel like this year has been a process of intentionally reprogramming my subconscious mind, like trying to get rid of this belief in scarcity and lack, and just really coming to believe in and own my power, and it seems that work is working.
Awesome. And that's what I think too. Like, I know I see every once in a while, like, oh my gosh, like, if you hold to a specific thing a lot of times, like, I want this thing and I'm gonna grasp onto it, it doesn't happen. But it seems like things have been happening in kind of surprising ways, like if you just let go a little and let it.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, and I think it's probably for everybody, but specifically for me and like my birth card, I'm a 7, and it's just 7s are a spiritual path. And it's just the nature of that path to be guided by spirit. There is, yes, set some goals and have some ideas and things that you want to manifest and create. But at the same time, you want to be open to be moved by creator and instinct and intuition much more than you want to overly attach yourself to a specific plan or path. Because like you said, you end up blocking a lot of what is really meant for you when you attach to what you think you want. And because most of the time, at least for me, and I would imagine for a lot of folks, that when I think I want something, that's my ego. And
Right.
Ego and spirit tend to be at odds most of the time, I think.
It kind of reminds me, I was yesterday I was kind of watching a YouTube reel of Key and Peele's collection of skits with Megan and, oh gosh, I forgot his name, but essentially the couple where she gets mad at him for something. He's just trying to like bring her back her jacket, and she's like, no. She keeps walking away, and he's like, your jacket though, no. It just, that's what it reminds me of, is like that battle between the ego and spirit. Like, spirit's like, yeah, but you might need this jacket.
It's raining, though. Why don't you take this here jacket?
And you're just like teasing spirit, like, I can outrun you, but you can't.
You like, cannot.
Yeah.
Or you can, but you probably won't have very much fun during that race.
Right. Like, one of the skits, they end up in the desert. They like pass out in the desert playing this game, and there's like a whole line of a whole lot of other people who had played that game, and they're all skeletons in the desert. That stuff is really funny to me.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any of that, but that last one, chasing the skeletons in the desert, just brought to mind like the whole Western world, you know, it's the
Yeah.
United States, that path of normalcy is leading you to a dusty grave.
We're like literally doing it to death. That's what it seems like. It's just like, come hell or high water, we're taking everyone with us. And it's just like, what the fuck?
Right. Like, and I've been doing a lot of guided meditations, and I guide folks to this party celebrating the end of the revolution. And I realized, I think, it was before Red Rocks, but at some point, you know, I've been doing that for a while, maybe since May or something. I've just been intentional. So whenever George Floyd happened, I decided that one of my very intentional visualizations, and especially since I am so often leading folks in guided meditation, that, you know, part of what I was going to do is help to usher in a successful, you know, revolution, seeing us win that. And I realized that, you know, that this revolution right now on the surface, even though it's kind of quieted down, it looks a lot like Black Lives Matter or whatever. And like, we're really fighting for the oppressed. And I guess we are fighting for the oppressed, but I feel like almost everyone is oppressed because, you know, even people who are kind of thriving or at least making a lot of money and having a very comfortable kind of entitled life, even them, they've all, to a certain extent, brought into some ridiculous idea of normalcy that is not allowing them to express their most authentic selves.
Right.
You know, and so those visualizations really led me to understand that this revolution is just not about people that look like me. It's for everyone's liberation is coming. We're coming to a place where everyone will be free to be their most authentic self. And so, you know, this is humanity.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just the people who are the most oppressed.
Right. I think about that a lot, and I always try to think about ways to talk about that. So, like for me, it's like I'm in between like just about every conversation, like gender and sexuality, race, and like even like familial identity, and like all of these different things. I'm even born on a cusp, you know.
Wow, so that you really are like the edge dweller or something.
Like it was like, a hint's not gonna, you know, do it. So we're just gonna make it really fucking obvious for her. You know, like it's just, I don't know. It's just like when you're in between things, you do see things differently, and like, you know, there are a lot of things I do want to side with, and I definitely make space for. You know, you know, like my brothers have it worse than I do. My stepdad definitely had it worse than I do. And just like, you know, because it's like depending on if you're male or female, or female presenting, or like if you're, you know, dark Black, like, and depending on how you talk, and so many different things, you know, definitely affect the way people react to you in a lot of ways. And like being in between, sometimes there are these spaces that don't get talked about, or are kind of like relegated to even more invisibility, I feel like sometimes. And so like I've gotten in the habit of like stepping aside, and also I keep being put in places where sometimes I have to bridge the gap. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really tricky, because it's just like, yeah, I can't negate anyone else's experiences, and I also can't negate mine. So like, I don't know, how can I help? That's a question I ask a lot. And lately, how can I help within the bounds of what I have to give, which is like, you know, the overflow. So that's the practice. Like if I have overflow, then I can give from there. Because I've never done that before. I've always been like, step aside, people please, and stuff like that. Like especially in these conversations. And but for me, it's almost like there, even in network marketing and networking, you have people who are kind of like bridges.
Yeah.
Like there are like all these nodes, and then you need the bridges to connect to the nodes to like transmit information and process and all of that other stuff. And those nodes need to be there, right? Those things need to be happening, all these actions and all these things from every single side. You're like talking about the oppression and stuff, and there are just so many things like, and it's becoming more and more apparent. This is the beautiful thing, because we have like these nodes like in communications and stuff. I feel like it's like ever more apparent, like, yeah, everyone is important here. And like that's tricky to say, that's not quite what I meant to say, but like all these nodes are important, and like what is information that can help everyone to grow, I think.
Right.
You know, because there's some conversations I'm in, I'm just like, oh, really don't want to be here because you are talking some crazy shit, you know, like this is not cool. Like you're like, you know, anytime like dehumanizing and stuff like that happens, it's like, that's not even tricky, it's just not even okay. But that's the thing, a lot of people are really blind to it. And like how do I as a bridge start like trying to, I mean, it's not fully my job to educate them, but I keep being put in these positions where, you know, like how can I help transmit this information so that, you know, you can make a step in the right direction, and so I can go and do what I need to do, you know, and be safe and keep my people safe. And I hope that made sense. It's like,
yeah, it does make sense. And I do believe that, you know, there are just no coincidences, and that everywhere we show up or end up, you know, we're meant to be there. And you know, I hear a lot of folks talking about it's not my job to educate you, and I hear that to a certain extent, but I'm trying to own that it is my job to educate as much as possible, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, I may end up sometimes in a situation where I'm just too depleted, and in order to defend myself, I just have to leave or whatever. But for the most part, if I am full of energy and life, and I'm in this place with these people who are ignorant or whatever, I want to try to speak up.
I think that's so cool. And
you
I'm
know?
really grateful for that attitude, because like, you know, like a lot of the folks who are like, you know, it's not my job, they're talking about me too. They're talking about me too. And I get it. It's fucking tiring. It is so tiring to be like, oh yeah, let me hold your hand and bring you to the information that you need to, like, you know, do some research, man. And like think about other people for a change. But at the same time, sometimes it's really frustrating because, you know, like it's the blind leading the blind if people are alone in their books. And like there has to be someone who's willing to speak or do something or whatever. And it doesn't have to be all the time. It's just like a book that's been helpful for me, especially in conversations with other people with like kind of like subtle racism, say, is So You Want to Talk About Race. That book is amazing. And it's just like for those kinds of conversations that I don't have time with, I'm just like, this is a really great book. And she's very compassionate and just like covers a whole lot of ground. And I really appreciate her viewpoint. I can't think of her name right now, but she grew up in Seattle, and, you know, kind of similar background in a certain way as me, where I grew up in Boise, Idaho, you know. And you don't want to negate like say the friendships you had growing up. So like, I mean, most of my friends were very nice white Mormon kids, right? And they were my friends. So like, if I just like go a certain shift and like, I don't know, I think about all that stuff all the time, and I'm trying not to go around in a circle. Well, I guess learn which battles to fight and which resources are available to direct. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm thinking about, you know, the Jack of Clubs and the mental creativity, and how how that creativity can turn into like an infinite loop.
I try to stop myself. Because the goal is to get back to the things on my list here that we talked about too, of about, so for people who don't know, I'm a Jack of Clubs in the deck, and I have some special attributes, ha ha ha. Not, you know, and I think some of them are good, and it's like,
Most
it's
of
really,
them.
most of them, some, when it's bad, it's bad. I get it. But it's really, if you get a reading with Euda, it's like, it's really cool because it is based on astrology, and you know, there's some, it gets into like traits that you can really look at and like hone or pay attention to, you know, like these are your tendencies. And those are always good to know. And yeah, I do definitely have a looping brain. It definitely does that.
But man, if you take that to the journal though, like wonderful, wonderful things have got to come out of that, you know?
Well, and I mean, looping around too, I want to get back to, like, we talked about like the integration and stuff, because we're talking about like, I love how you talk about like more holistically. Like, I know everyone has their part, and so like I think that's where some of those conversations come from. Like, this is what I can do. Like, people are really, they really know what they can do, and so I really super appreciate that. Like, and it's generally folks who have been with the same communities for a really long time, and there's a lot to protect there, right? There's a lot to protect. I totally get that. I'm an outlier. I'm like, I just float around, you know, and I go between nodes and all this other stuff. So like the way I move is a little bit differently, and I don't expect anyone to do those codes. And so like the way you're talking though is like there's this growth that's happening for everyone, and in a sense, like on like a spiritual plane, we're all in this together. And I kind of want to separate that a little bit, because it's going to be tricky saying like we're all in this together, and then like, you know, like, what, are you a Trump supporter? Oh no. But this is a, you know, we're also talking about different planes and levels, and getting these downloads that a lot of us don't know we're getting. And like, it does feel like a lot of things are shifting. Like, we've been held in place for like, what, 5 months, 5, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And like, things have been stalled, if not totally stilled. And we're forced to look at some stuff. And I don't know, I've experienced it, like waking up with like all these eureka moments, I feel like. And so like that integration part, you're talking about being at the integration part personally.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, so let's talk about that.
Okay. So yeah, during, well, we've already talked about how I read cards and how I periodically post just readings up on Instagram. And, you know, I was really expecting that, you know, we had these 3 eclipses in late May, June, and July. It was like 3 eclipses in a 5-week period or whatever. And I kept expecting that by that 3rd eclipse at the latest, you know, that life would just be, I would just be walking around like Superwoman and have it all figured out, and, you know, just leaping buildings in a single bound and all that jazz. And that was not the case. I was more tired than ever, you know, at the end of that 3rd eclipse. And I came to realize that, you know, that the portal was kind of like the intense workout period, you know, but you still have to integrate all of the things that you learned and all the growth that happened, you know, even with yoga, you know, you'd have a yoga practice and you need to sit still in Savasana to integrate the practice, you know, before you go on about your day, or you could end up setting yourself back, you know? And so ultimately there was an integration phase that I wasn't thinking about or expecting, where I was really, really tired. I would say the majority of July and even the beginning of August, you know? And it's just, it was really uncomfortable for me. I'm a fire sign, and summer for me is a time where I generally can just go, 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 go. I don't need to sleep, you know? But I've just been tired. I was so tired, but I just rested,
Yeah.
as much as I could, because I immediately, when I realized that I was tired, I just understood that there's an integration happening, and there's a lot of information and upgrades, that have happened, that my body had to figure out how to integrate. Like, we're shifting, we're coming to a place where we have to channel a much higher frequency of energy, and being able to switch our DNA around so that we can do that is exhausting. Like, I kind of got thrown into I think I'm not supposed to say doula, but birth work.
Okay.
I got thrown into doing some birth work, and while I was holding a baby, I realized that that eclipse portal pretty much made us all babies, and we're not physically growing. We're not like necessarily getting physically bigger, but our energy is growing, and it is exhausting. It's like a baby becoming a new human,
Yeah.
it's that kind of exhaustion. So like I said, I feel like this week is the first, even though I've been tired because I haven't been sleeping right this week. But even in that tiredness, I have felt more like myself than, in a really long time. And so I just feel like I've finally completed, that integration, and I'm grateful.
Awesome. Is it like what is it? For some reason, I'm thinking of that Osho Zen tarot card, the one, I think it's Adventure, where the kid, there's like a rainbow light in front of the kid, and little toddlers like starting to walk out, I think. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, because it's like the integration has happened, and you're going through like this new space, and you can't see what's on the other side of it, but like, but it's like, full of light and wonder. And you can't help but to like keep going, right? um
Right.
and I don't know, for some reason that card came to mind, because that reminds me of that, because it sounds like you're on the threshold of like that next step, which is really neat.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, I mean, I fear that it's just another download, though.
yeah.
I know that there's some more eclipses, or at least one more coming. I feel like there was I don't know. I feel like, so what was that? July 4th or 3rd was the last one. July, August, September, October, November, December. Oh, so maybe I have some time. But I feel like by January, at the latest, there's going to be another big download
Yeah.
coming.
I don't know. I just like, I like live in multiple worlds, and so the folks who like find out about my woo woo stuff, they're like, wait a second, like, but like it does make sense though, because it's just like, it feels like people are starting to shift and kind of lock into spaces that serve them a little better, than this whatever crazy we all were doing before, and like,
Yeah.
it does seem like some folks are going to try to go harder back, like that's the, is it the cognitive bias or something like that, where people are like, oh
Mm.
yeah, I see the information and I'm just gonna go back over here and just like shut it off. I am a little worried about that and what that's going to do.
Well,
um
it's gonna get us sat back down again. I think that if too many people refuse to continue the work of finding their authentic self, if they try to go back to the desk job, or, whatever jobs you can get these days that are not really your heart's desire, if you do that, if enough people do that and refuse to honor their destiny, then we're going to get sheltered and placed again.
yeah,
That's what I think. I guess time will tell.
it kind of
Hopefully.
seems like that's what happened.
I mean, the planet is trying to give us a chance, because she will defend herself if we can't get it together, but she's trying to make us sit still long enough to get it together, before she has to actually do something drastic or more drastic.
I mean, what else do we need? I'm just like, people wake up, like there's like what, fire cyclones and like freaking whew, so many things.
I don't know what it's gonna take.
So what are things, there's like, we were talking a little bit about like you know, like you weren't always were you always super spiritual?
No. No,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I was always kind of guided by something that I couldn't name.
Mhm.
But no, I definitely, you know, the first 33 years of my life was hardcore, you know, math and science,
Yeah.
you know, which I think fits. Now, you know, they go together.
Yeah.
Science and spirituality are really like this, even though most
Yeah.
people think it's like this.
Right.
But yeah, no, I was just over here in my left brain. I was telling someone yesterday, you know, because she was asking me, because sometimes when I'm doing the guided meditations, I tell people, see, visualize, or pretend, you
Yeah.
know, because I understand that everybody cannot make pictures in their mind at will. And that's because when I left corporate 12 years ago, I couldn't make pictures in my
Oh
mind
wow.
at will. All of my life from, you know, I got that aptitude test in second grade, that showed that I had, especially for, you know, a high risk or whatever, Black woman or Black
Yeah.
child in the
Yeah.
projects, I was abnormally good at math and science. And so that was all that I was taught. I was funneled. I didn't really have any choices. You know,
Right.
it's pretty much a given from the day that I took that test that I was going to end up being an engineer, you know. And so my whole first half, outside of reading, now reading has always been kind of my saving grace and my kind of escape maybe into the right brain. But for the most part, you know, the first 33 years of my life were spent in the left brain. And so when I left corporate and was reading a book that told me that the spirit doesn't speak English,
Mhm.
and that if I really want my desires to manifest, I better, you know, try to get good at seeing what I want instead of saying what I want. And so I became determined to learn how to visualize. And, you know, it actually has been a part of my yoga practice. Like, long before I even went to yoga teacher training, when I do sun salutations in between each set, I stop and I visualize. I visualize a forest, the mountains, the ocean. Like I visualize myself going in a circle.
Mhm.
And I practice that. And to the point now I can leave my eyes open and make that visualization, you know? And so I think it's important to let people know, because I think there's a lot of people who believe either you have it or you don't. And
Yeah.
that's not the case. You can totally grow your ability to form pictures in your mind if that's what you want to do.
That reminds me of like an exercise, like of drawing a yantra, and the exercise was to actually draw it, you know, in our vision, and
Mm.
it's a pretty complicated one, and I've drawn it so much. I've been doing it for like 12 years or something now. I'm just usually pretty lazy, but I could draw it, you know, right in front of my forehead, and it's like, it's kind of like it reminds me, like the process of it reminds me of trying to, when you're dreaming, trying to write something, like,
Mm.
you know, you're able to, but like you're trying to make the connection on the page in the dream, for it to actually connect, and it is kind of work, and it's like flexing a muscle or something, you
It
know,
is a
until you get
muscle.
it. Yeah. So I like that you mentioned that. I think about that a lot with my students too, because they're like, oh, we're not creative people, we're techie, whatever, blah blah blah, and I'm like, let's talk about that. You know, like, why do you think you're not creative people? And this is actually what creativity is. And I like the idea of thinking about exercises that can help them, you know, step more into that space. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. And I was the same way. I definitely, when I was an engineer, it was like, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist,
Yeah.
I'm a scientist, but, it's part and parcel. Like, we have a right and a left brain. And even though we may have a stronger tendency to use one over the other, we can do the work to balance those scales.
Yeah. Well, I always think too, like even in geometry and AP geometry way back in high school, you know, Klukstall, my teacher, he was always talking about visualizing the other side of the cube, or then the shapes get real weird after that, like the dodecahedron, etc. Right? And like at first you're like, how? Because cubes easier to think about because you can like count the cubes and stuff. But when the shapes start getting interesting, even more interesting, it's like, how do you count the shapes on the other side of the structure?
Right.
And so that's visualization in mathematics. And I don't know why he taught it to us that way. I don't know if everyone does, but it was kind of neat.
Yeah, it sounds really awesome. And, the interesting thing, or what stood out to me when you said, but how do you count? And it's like, you're not counting.
Mm-mm.
Because you're moving away from that left brain thing. When you start trying to visualize, you're moving away from the counting. It's more of seeing through feeling or something like that. Like, I don't know what the right language is,
well, that's for me, it was tactile. Like, I saw myself in that space moving to the back of the structure, and like actually like putting my hand to each of the shapes and like trying to keep track of them, which can get overwhelming sometimes, but like that's the exercise, right? Like it's like if you can do that, like your brain can hold like so much information. So it's like, why not like step onto all different sides of the structure and like and that is freaking powerful. That's powerful.
Yes. Our brains are freaking magnificent. All of us are. Everything about us is much more magnificent than the average person believes, for sure.
That's true. Yeah, a lot of people are like, these are just meat puppets. And like, these meat puppets are doing a whole lot.
A whole lot. And the more you try to get them to do, the more they will do. Like, really, belief system is really our only limit.
Right.
The body doesn't get tired very often. It's the brain. It's that you expect to be tired, and so you're tired.
Yeah. That's yeah, I could go on about that stuff too. As a massage therapist, that's like pinball machine. Well, I wanted to get a little bit back more to the integration, and like we wanted to do a part 2 because we talked a little bit about like what stoked your spiritual journey, and it's obviously it's different for different people. Like, some people see a spark in the water, like you have an auditory hallucination maybe, or like all these different things. And sometimes we take a trip, and like we talked about that a little bit. I've definitely heard a lot of amazing stories, and I know that there's like there were lots of experiments and stuff done with like psychedelics and like different things that play on our physiology and stuff, because it puts us in a different space that we weren't able to access before. And sometimes like people act like meditation is so easy, like especially accessing that space that we're all trying to seek, right? And so like I'm just gonna go ahead and say I'm not condoning any of this because I can't, but like I do believe in the full realm of human experience, and I also believe as a spiritual practitioner that I think that all of us are going to get to whatever the big juicy stuff is that we're supposed to get to in our own ways, and there are so many different ways to do it. That's
probably as many different ways as people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I if you felt comfortable talking about that, I was curious about that.
So yeah, I totally had what I would call my first like super big, or at least in memory, spiritual experience after taking some ecstasy. And I was just like, I felt the fullness of my power, you know, and it was immediately also clear to me that this is why people get addicted to drugs. And so, you know, this is not something that you access just when you take a drug. This is something that you can learn to access without the drug. And so that's what started my path. It was immediately very clear to me, like, this is dope. And yes, I will try certain drugs, you know, or take drugs to induce that. But immediately it was like, we're not about to get hooked on no drugs, but we're about to figure out how to create this feeling, you know, without the drug. Like, it was clear to me that it could be done. Now, it wasn't clear to me that it could take 12 plus years. But yeah, so it was ecstasy for me. And it's so funny. I can't remember if I read it before or after, or probably both. But even Allen Ginsberg wrote an essay where he said that he believes that all politicians should have to do LSD. And after I had that spiritual experience, I understood why he said that. You know, because these people who are living in nothing but privilege from day one need to experience something outside of themselves to give them some perspective, to help them, you know, connect with people or anything, spirit, you know, in a much more, in a stronger way, in a real way, you know.
It's like, yeah, a lot of us don't, a lot of us are so locked up and boxed up by the stories that our society has built, especially surrounding like capitalism, that we're not seeing how everything is connected. Like, so, like, kind of, like, really literally, you know, like every decision we make, every single decision we make, especially like as anything that we consume or create or whatever, it's just, it's mind-boggling that people are unable to see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not mind boggled by it. I get it, because I understand that pretty much is the whole point of public school, you know, is to create a bunch of robots to a certain extent, or I don't know. That's maybe not a nice word. But, you know, it's the point of public school is to create this sense of normalcy and to create people who just want to fit in and be like other people. And, you know, to create people who are not questioning, you know, that are not doing the research, that are not able or not willing to know more than what is handed to them, you know.
Right. And I used to think that was okay, and for people to do that. And I don't know, maybe I think because at some point people get shook out of stuff, especially in these days, because like how can it not happen? It's just like, you know, there's like the great American dream and you're creating this thing. And I mean, just because of how life works, like life inherently has built-in loss, so much loss, right? Loss of lovers and family, and often home, and like the workforce looks absolutely different than it used to be. You know, there's some people on this old paradigm of like, you have to be loyal to your work or whatever, and it'll be loyal to you, but that's a lie. We don't.
I mean, if it's your
life.
own private business, perhaps, but if you're working somebody's corporate job, it is not going to be loyal to you.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe not your business either, because like, I mean, look at what we're going through. You know, we have this space, this limbo where like there are so many things that aren't going to be able to survive for so many different reasons. And you know, I noticed a lot of people are like, you know, they've been in that flux of like trying to make the decision of like between obligation and being able to hold it still, and it's just like, well, this is happening, and it's time to let it go, you know. So like it's cool to see all of those ships, and interesting to see where they're falling and how they're happening. I'm trying to remember how that was connected. Just like this whole, I guess here's a roundabout way to it. I remember one time I was like just so mad at the world and people and everything, just absolutely disappointed. Like all of my jaded everything came back, and I was just like, what's the fucking point, right? What's the point of anything? Because like, I guess it was kind of an existential crisis. Like, you know, people are idiots. Like they're fucking it up. Like it's just like, what the, you know, global warming, things are dying. Like nothing makes sense. People are out of their minds. And to an extent, it feels like we can't help ourselves. So it's like the habits we've gotten ourselves in, we're still doing it, and we just keep running with it and don't know how to stop. And that was really scary to me. And I remember I was like falling asleep, and I heard something like, well, doesn't it make sense if like things are going to shit, pretty much? Like if everything's being destroyed, doesn't it make sense to work on global consciousness, like to expand that and to make it vibrate at a higher frequency? It was more eloquently said than I just did, but I was like, oh, interesting. And then I fell asleep, you know. And I actually remembered that, and I thought it was really interesting. So it was it because it helps me to let all of that go.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, pounding my pillow, like, why do I even have to be here? Like, what am I doing here? What's the point? I'm just adding to the problem, blah, 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 etc. And so it's just like that.
Spirit got you out of that.
I throw tantrums sometimes. But like, it's just like, you know, it just keeps seeming like it keeps saying, go do your work. Go do your work. Everyone needs to do their work from wherever they are. So how do we integrate it? Do we even know? Do we just let it?
Perhaps. We definitely gotta let it. I don't think fighting it will help. I'm not sure what kind of intentional things that we can do to help, except for maybe the meditation and the yoga and the thing, because again, I feel like the majority of what it is about is, you know, we're evolving and our frequency is growing, you know. And so if we think about this as an energetic process, then the things that we can intentionally do are the things that, you know, help us to vibe higher anyway. You know, like yoga and eating better and meditation, consuming much more water, you know, because water is a conductor of energy. You know? So I mean, I don't know for a fact, but that's the only thing I can imagine. I feel like there's so much unknown about what we're going through that it's hard to say how you can help usher it in, but I feel like that kind of stuff makes sense.
Yeah. It feels like kind of making space for it too. It's just like creating, you know, like tapping in and stuff. I know that when I actually do sit down and kind of tap in, it's like clarity comes. And it's like, it's little bits, which I'm comfortable with right now. Like, I have a garden to take care of. And just like, I mean, even with the garden, you know, like at the beginning of this pandemic, it's real easy to panic. And I definitely have my panic triggers. A friend looked at my cupboards in my freezer and they're like, oh, you're a little neurotic. I'm like, yeah, apparently when I'm stressed like this, I become a little squirrel. So that's why I'm trying to like share with people and stuff. But like as soon as the pandemic hit and we were stuck like home in place or whatever, safer in place, I just had the urge to plant things. I didn't care what it was. I like grabbed yucca seeds off the side of the street and like flowers that were probably weeds. I just wanted to see if stuff would grow. I took like the onions and the garlic and like all the things. And then all of a sudden people started bringing me plants and seeds. And so I had to take it outside. And that was how I got through that first couple of months, just like being overwhelmed with this, all of a sudden, this new energy of gardening. And I think that's what it was, is just like this urge to like, you know, you have to throw it all into the ground and like ground it and like stick your feet in it, your hands in.
Right.
And
The earth is, and that's what I was going to say. Like, it's got to be a good time for you right now, you know, because being in having your hands and feet in the earth will absolutely heal you from a lot of tendency towards neuroses, you know. When it gets cold, you know, and we're not planting, that's when things get interesting. You gotta bring some stuff inside, but still it's not the same as really, man, putting, you know, having these chakras in your hands and your feet, you know, just open and ready to absorb the energy of the earth is absolute medicine. And I know a lot of people who do farm work in the summer who have a really, really much more difficult time in life, you know, in the winter. But you know,
it might end up being a jungle in here this winter, because like
you might be end up what?
With a jungle, because like there are already 2 plants from outside I'm bringing inside, and like they're huge, and like just I don't know, that's just become a habit now. And seriously, like when my brain is starting to do that thing, I'm just like, I gotta go check on my tomatoes.
That's a good instinct. That's a great instinct. Well, yeah, bring it indoors. I definitely have a friend in Chicago who she actually does presentations and she sells seeds. But she definitely, you know, advocates and educates about creating an indoor, you know, therapy by having as many plants as possible, by connecting with and taking care of the plants. And it's not probably, I would imagine, I guess I do have some plants, but I don't know, probably not enough to seriously affect like the oxygen in my environment or whatever. But so I feel like it's definitely got to be more potent to be able to connect with the earth. But I can also imagine having enough plants adding more oxygen to your environment that you can get a similar kind of therapy going on indoors.
Right. And it's like each plant is different too. So I have a friend who meditates with cactus. And it's fun because the cactus he gave me, he Frankensteins them. So he'll like graft different pieces of different cactuses together. The one he gave me is really interesting because he meditates with them and stuff too. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm gonna meditate with it too, because it looks like the snake behind all the gods and goddesses, the big honchos in the Indian mythology and Vedic texts. Naga means snake, but there's a name for it, like say behind Shiva, and it's like the many-headed snake that's like almost like a chair or a throne behind him. That's what this cactus kind of looks like.
Wow.
And like shaped and everything like this many-headed cobra. And I was just like, oh yeah, you meditate with these guys. And so I don't know, it just felt really good because each plant is different and each plant has a different need. And so just learning like kind of really quickly, like, oh crumb, what do these need? And you know, why is this water resistant or whatever? And it's a really good exercise, and it definitely gets you out of your, you know, brain meats a little bit, because it's like a whole other thing, you know. I'm like trying not to anthropomorphize them too much because I do tend to do that. But maybe there's a too sunny window, or maybe the pot isn't draining correctly, and like. So like my rosemary, I took it outside, and outside, like you're dealing with beetles or ants or grubs or whatever. Like there's so many different things, or roots from other plants coming up through your damn pot. Um, so I don't
Wow.
know. It's been really fun, and just like you know, like I don't have kids or pets, so it's like thinking about some other energy that is not just my own and not just in my head. So yeah, I guess instead of the crazy plant lady or the crazy cat lady, I'm becoming the crazy plant lady.
But
Um,
that's dope, because even when you were talking about it, I came to realize for the first time that, having a bunch of disparate plants that you have to care for in a different way is kind of a tribe of sorts.
yeah.
It absolutely is a family.
Oh, wow.
So I'm about that.
That's
I like it.
so good. That's so good to me because like I think a lot lately about how like you can't control who's in your community. Community is community. So like if you lived in a commune, you'd have to figure out how to figure shit out, right? Like I knew a woman, uh, Kit Muldoon. She passed,
Mm.
years ago. Really, really fun, beautiful woman and poet. And she talked about like living on a commune and how the commune's small, it's a small community, and maybe you have some beef with someone, things aren't right. But like if everyone didn't come to the party because there was something kind of weird between someone, there wouldn't be a party, right? So people
Right.
still showed up, and they figured out how to communicate and let things dissolve if they needed to, or resolve or whatever. um, and it's interesting because when our communities get bigger and bigger, we don't necessarily think that way anymore, but like I think we really do need to think that way. Like there are
Yeah.
all kinds of energies that we're working with, and no one's the same, and like it isn't fair to ask anyone to like be exact, let's all march in the same exact step, because that actually isn't going to serve us or the planet, you
Right.
know.
I mean, and the smaller the community is, like the more important diversity is. And so that's where our strengths lie. We need as many people with as many different talents as possible,
Right.
you know, and when those, like you said, when it starts to grow and those new energies come in, we have to figure out how to integrate them, and how
Right.
to work with them. And even if it may be the case that, I believe that it's possible to be an accountable and in community and working with somebody without having to be their best friend,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and that's so real. Like I think about that too, because there's some people they're not my favorite, and they have some incredible skills that I've been trying to do on my own, but I don't necessarily have time to do.
Right.
Like it definitely behooves all of us to be able to be like, hey, like we got some stuff, but I recognize this in you, and I'm wondering if you will help me with blah blah blah.
Right.
And it can be like a mutual help. And that's really fun when those things can happen, when they're like, those two nodes or five nodes or whatever, and they come together for a certain purpose. It's really exciting what can happen there,
Right.
instead of everyone trying to do it on their own, because that's a lie. It's a lie. Our
It doesn't
American
work.
society, no, American society is like, you build your own insular thing behind a fence and it's all good, right? No. It's actually
Not anymore. It ain't. And not for a long time.
yeah.
I mean, I do believe that we will just build right back to this, in maybe 6,000 or 7,000 years or whatever. But now we're breaking this shit down, and we're coming into community. We have to have tribes that can support each other and sustain to a certain extent. And that's part of the reason why, the authenticity is going to be celebrated. Like I've come to say that, we're going to appreciate the things that we have in common, but we're
Yeah.
going to celebrate our differences, because it's those
Right.
differences that will make, the tribe or the community stronger.
Right. And I feel like to a certain degree in the 80s, there were like a lot of PSAs like giving lip service to this kind of idea. I think they said melting pot, but the pictures that they show were truly diverse, like people from all over the world and different cultures, representing however they represented, and like all different kinds of musics and stuff. I just remember as a kid seeing those kinds of things, and I don't know how prevalent that was or anything, but I feel like there were PSAs and definitely things in K through 3 that were emphasizing that kind of community. So I'm wondering what I know that by nature America is like very homogenizing, even of like cultural foods and things like that. It gets kind of not dumbed down, but kind of dumbed down. Like, where's the spice?
Right. Right.
And so like I love hearing stuff like that, because like I think for a lot of people, like, so I remember someone told me once, like, well, one day we'll just all be peanut butter colored or whatever. And then it happens with language too, like the death of language and the death of nuance in language. And so like, I believe, I can't point you to a direct linguistics theorist or anything, but language does shape how we think in a lot of ways, or it can. And so there's another challenge there. So I really do crave the space where we can see each other and not, what's the word? Like, we don't need to incorporate and homogenize all of it. We can let it happen and let it work with us when we want it to work with us, because like all of those point of views and all of those different ways of thinking are so very important, and I feel like we're losing it. I don't know. I'm not a great thinker. or a guru or whatever.
You are a great thinker.
I like talking with people who like, expand my thought and challenge me and stuff too, because I definitely don't know anything. I know little bits about a lot of things. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth. I like to connect things so that they happen if I can. So I don't know, what do you think? We have about 5 minutes left, and I'm just wondering, like, what do you feel next steps are for folks, without giving it all away? And then I also want to remind people how to get in touch with you to access your services and help to support you and things like that too.
I don't know. I feel like next steps are really just to, I think it's going to be different for everybody, but the broad strokes to me are that we all have a destiny and a purpose, something that we were born to do that is going to help to make this world a better place. And I feel like as long as you are taking steps to honor that, everything is going to be fine. Like, I'm not telling people, I don't believe that everyone has to quit their job to find their purpose. I believe that you can work at a restaurant or a desk that you don't necessarily love, enough to pay the bills, as long as you are also in your off time honoring that your heart and that part of you that you were born to share with the world. But if you are going to that job and getting tired out, and then so you don't come home and do anything to honor yourself, then I feel like you're kind of part of a problem, and you could be part of the reason that we get sat down again. So to me, it's just anything creative or whatever that really helps you to connect with your most authentic self is the key. And certainly to be thinking about, and connecting with people who you can see, as a part of your tribe, trying to live a more tribal existence, definitely coming to understand that, like you said, this every man or nuclear family is an island, idea is bullshit and it's not going to work. We have to learn how to work with others and
Right.
live with others in order to survive. So if you're honoring your destiny, or at least trying to find your destiny, trying to remember who you were born to be, and trying to connect with people that you can build community and some sort of potentially sustainable environment with, then you're probably on the right path.
I can dig that. And
Yeah,
that's real. Like, I think there've definitely been a lot of messages like, do all the things. And we don't have energy. No, most of us don't have energy for that. It's like
right.
what we can do today. And I know for me, like one of those openings was starting to garden this summer. I was like,
Nice.
what? This is what I'm doing? Oh, okay. Now I'm like, yes, this is so cool.
Exactly. Like, and if you don't know, and that's the other thing. So maybe if you are one of those people who knows that you have a destiny, but you have zero ideas of what it is, definitely like get into some astrology or, you know, something like that. Reach out, you know, to folks like me who help people to figure that out. Or even like if you don't, I feel like everybody has some sort of an art, you
Yeah.
know, that can help them. Like you said, you didn't know that gardening was going to become a passion, you
Right.
know, but you tried it. And so I tell people, I really believe that if you say things like I'm not an artist, then one of a great beginning step is coloring.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like coloring is really, really, really huge. I know a lot of people, I've told people in readings and they're like, that's a waste of time. I can't make myself do that.
Yeah.
But everybody does have some sort of an artistic inclination. And if you don't know what yours is, then I can't think of a better place to start, because it is so affirming. These little random pieces of paper, you know, that start out black and white, but then after you, you know, you do a little bit and that color comes together, it just makes you feel good, and it can open you up to the other bigger creative urges that live inside of you. And those creative urges is definitely where our heart and our destiny lie, or can, you know, they can lead to those things.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'll put your links and everything in the bottom of this YouTube video as well. And is there any last things to send us off with?
Nope. Just definitely feel free to hit me up for readings, yoga, meditation, and art therapy. Linktree / Euda K Best, eudakbest@gmail.com. If something I said resonated with you and you want to send me a donation, everything is Euda K Best, Cash App, Venmo, paypal.me/Euda K Best. And maybe that's it. You know, the other thing is that, you know, we're trying to walk into a place of abundance. And in order to be open to receive abundance, we have to be willing to give. And I do think, like, if you read the Celestine Prophecy or one of those books of his, he talks about we're going to come to a place where every time somebody drops a jewel on us that that we learn something from, that we know is going to make our lives better, that we pay them for that, you know. And that's going to be a more natural form of currency, you know, or exchange than this capitalism. Yeah, capitalism is it's not there yet, but capitalism is essentially dust. It is the problem. For sure.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm gonna close this up.
Okay.